The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, where every week we learn from the greatest sports stars on the planet. Olympic champions, world number ones, and world record holders. They're all here on iTunes and Stitcher and richardparr.net on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. I hope you've got over your Olympics hangover. Probably like me, you've just been enjoying the start of the English Premier League football season. And of course, then you have this international break where, for example, England play one match and it just really disrupts the flow. I'm not really sure this has ever made sense, but there we go. There we have it. I used to really not like those people who used to complain about the Premier League break and the international break and be, oh, I only love Prem football. And I used to really hate those people, but I've become one of those people. And I'm not sure why. I think it might be because of the Fantasy Premier League, because that gets me interested in matches in the Premier League which I don't normally care about. Like back in the day, if let's say, I don't know, Bolton versus Burnley, no disrespect to either team, but it's not Manchester United versus Arsenal, so it wouldn't be necessarily a game I would be interested in unless I had players in my Fantasy Premier League team. And so that's what keeps me going in matches which I don't really care about. And when the Premier League's not on and I can't compete in my Fantasy Premier League, then I kind of lose interest. Maybe there needs to be a Fantasy Premier League, a fantasy game for international football. Or maybe I need to do a bit of betting. Who knows? But football is well and truly back. But also, in a couple of weeks, we'll have the Paralympic Games. And I've got a fantastic guest for you next week when the Paralympics starts. It is Tanni Grey-Thompson, Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, multi-time Paralympic champion in wheelchair racing. A fantastic interview with her. You can hear that next week on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. But this week, I have got Laura Geitz. She is one of the most successful netball players of all time. She has won the World Championships with Australia twice, once in Singapore and once on home soil in Sydney last year. Really interesting chat with Laura. We talk about a whole range of different things, from her training to her early life living in the country and getting involved in sport, to winning those world titles, to coping with not playing when you're on the bench and how you can cope with that frustration, to some of the controversy about men playing netball. We discuss all of that on this week's The Best in the World with Richard Parr with Laura Geitz. Great interview with her. That will be coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about this week's sponsor. Once again, it is Audible. They are one of the leading suppliers of audiobooks in the world. And for you, the listener of the Best in the World podcast, they are offering you a free audiobook download as part of their free 30-day trial. All you've got to do, this is very, very easy, is go to audibletrial.com/best. That's audibletrial.com/best for your free audiobook as part of your free 30-day trial. It's a product I use myself. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know that I've recommended many audiobooks that I listen to, and I think it's a service you would really benefit from and appreciate. And give it a go for 30 days. There is absolutely no problem, because at the end, if you don't want to use it, you can just cancel it and it won't cost you a penny. If you do like the service, just by giving it a go, you're helping me, because they are my sponsors, and by helping you, you're helping me. And that link again is audibletrial.com/best. All right, let's get to it. Australia's netball captain, Laura Geitz.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Laura Geitz, welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, a two-time world champion. Let's start from the very beginning. Tell us about your early life. You grew up in the country, right? And how did you start playing netball?
I did. I grew up in a small town called Allara, which is about 2.5 hours southwest of Brisbane. And I grew up on a cattle and grain property, a 1,500-acre cattle and grain property, with my mum and my dad and my elder sister, Carla. And basically, I had the dream childhood. I think it's only probably now that I look back and realise how lucky I was to grow up in the country. I obviously took it for granted when I was young because I didn't know any different. But it was just a very active childhood. I was always outdoors. I'd get home from school at 3:30 in the afternoon, and we had one rule that we just had to be home by sunset. So we were always either outdoors, helping on the farm, riding our bikes, riding our horses. We just had, so many next door neighbours, kids that we were always just mucking around with. So we had the best childhood. And particularly, obviously growing up in a small community, sport is a huge thing here in Australia and anywhere for that matter. So I played so much sport. I did athletics and swimming, but I didn't come across netball until I was 13 years old. So a little bit, I suppose, a late bloomer, you could say, in terms of age starting. A lot of people start a lot earlier, and the reason I started was because of my older sister, Carla. She came home from school one day. She was playing netball, and Mum had bought her these great Asics netball shoes to wear for the season. And it was kind of a big deal because we very rarely got the latest and greatest sporting equipment. So a new pair of Asics shoes was a pretty big thing. And I just remember seeing these shoes and loving the look of them and thinking, I'm going to sign up for netball so I can get a pair of shoes. So that's kind of how my journey began when I was 13 years old. And from the first game I played, I just absolutely loved it.
It's amazing how younger siblings get almost inspired, slightly jealous of their older brothers or sisters, and that's very often why people get into certain activities or sports. So when did you realise that you were good at netball? When did you realise that you could take this really seriously, more than just playing for fun?
Look, to be honest, a lot of people say, were you just natural at it? And the answer is definitely no. I think a lot of people wanted me to play netball at that age because I was all arms and legs, and I had this huge growth spurt when I was 12. So I was pretty much similar height at 13 as what I am now, which is just over 6 foot. So you can imagine the coaches at the netball program wanted me to sign up and play, but I was just all arms and legs and not much else. So it wasn't like I was a complete natural at it. The one thing that I had for it was just a passion. I just loved it. I loved playing sport. For me, I was exceptionally shy as a kid, and sport was the one place where I could kind of, I suppose, feel accepted and, just be a part of something that was exciting and encouraging. So from the first game of netball I played, I knew that I wanted to play forever, because I remember looking at the scoreboard in the school gym and just thinking, I never want this game to finish. I hope I can play the next game and the next game after that. So in terms of probably knowing that I could potentially pursue a career with it, probably wasn't until about 3 or 4 years down the track, when I was about 16, and I started getting invited to camps and development programs for Queensland and Australia. So it was definitely not something that was completely natural to me, but I just had this amazing love for the game.
What was it like when you first played for Australia?
Oh, so many different emotions. Just having my name, even before playing the game, just having my name read out in the team is just the most incredible moment where you've realised you've achieved something you've dreamt of since a little girl. But then, pulling on the dress. And the biggest thing for me, the moment that gets me every single time, no matter if it was my first time playing for Australia or, my 30th test is just the moment where you stand on the transverse line and listen to the opposing country's national anthem and then your own. That for me is just, the words don't describe that feeling, and there's nothing else that can provide the satisfaction or that feeling anywhere else. It is just the most special moment that sends shivers down your spine. So every moment that that happens, I know that you can't take any of those games or moments for granted, because they are just so special, and you have to realise how privileged you are to be a part of that moment.
And you've had lots of special moments in your career. I believe it was in 2011 you won the World Championships for the first time in Singapore. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, well, I was only quite young in 2011. I wasn't an established player in the Diamonds. I was, on the bench. I spent a majority of the time of the game sitting on the bench, and netball's a little bit of a different sport in that fact that if you are on the bench, you can remain on the bench for the entire season, or you don't really get to see a whole lot of court time. So I was very eager. I was about 22 at that time, and I was exceptionally eager and just wanted to be out on court. I was kind of like a caged animal, I suppose you could say. So it was important for me, I suppose, to sit and have that time and watch from the sideline, just to build that burning desire to want to be out there playing. And at the same time, that experience in Singapore was just wonderful. I was watching and observing so many great girls playing for the Diamonds that had great careers in Sherelle McMahon and Monia Gerard and Kath Cox. So I was probably a bit in awe watching those girls and just loving being a part of it all. And getting to the grand final was obviously what we set out for, and we came up against the Silver Ferns in that moment. And like most games against the Silver Ferns, it went down to the wire in extra time. And, I'm sitting on the bench, and Norma, the coach, looked at me and told me I was going on the second half. And we were actually trailing by, I think, about 9 goals in the second half. And she threw me on court and told me just to go out there and do something and to turn the game around. So, it just goes to show you've got to just be ready to go. And it was an amazing moment. And definitely when I reflect on some of the best times of my career, it's definitely one of them when we won by 1 goal in double extra time. It was pretty amazing.
Fantastic. Now, you said you were eager to be getting onto the court. Is there a fine line which yourself and players have to go through where they want to be eager and they want to be part of the team, but they also don't want to be a negative aspect or have a negative impact on the team? How difficult is it to be eager but also not disruptive when you're not playing? Because obviously there's frustration.
Yeah, it is. It's a really interesting topic, I suppose, and it's something that a lot of athletes really struggle with at different times in their careers. And, I suppose when I look at the younger girls coming through that sit the bench, it is so hard, because if you weren't frustrated, if you didn't believe you could be out there on court, then I question why you're in the team in the first place. So I think that frustration and that burning desire to be out there is actually a good thing. But the challenge is being able to control that and not letting it erupt in front of your teammates or your coaches, and having your time where you can explode, I suppose, so to speak, and have your time where you are frustrated and angry, but it can never be seen in front of your teammates, because most of the time they've all been there and done it before you, and they've been in that situation, and the girl you're sitting behind has gone through the process that you're going through. So it's really important, and I suppose probably in the last few years for us at the Diamonds, we've done a lot of work in, the culture on the bench is just as important as the culture that's out on the court. And you've got to understand that when you're sitting on the bench, you might not be out physically contributing to the game on court, but you've got a role to play on the bench, and that's a particularly important role to play. And if you play that to the best of your ability, it's amazing what you can actually bring to the team. And I know firsthand that it's not easy, but at the same time, it's very important for the development, I believe, of an athlete to experience that side of the game before they get the court time that, everyone is so much wanting.
It's almost a rite of passage. So 4 years later, you retained the title in Australia. Did it matter more that it was done on home soil?
Oh, look, I think it's always a dream to play in front of your home crowd and your family and your friends, and have that opportunity to achieve something in front of so many loyal fans and supporters. So there was a huge amount of pressure, I think, associated with the World Championships in Sydney last year, and probably not until after the World Champs we realised just how much pressure was on us. So particularly special, amazing, a wonderful thing to be a part of. But it definitely did have its challenges along the way, that's for sure.
So let's talk a bit more about what has made you a two-time world champion. What is your daily routine? How do you normally go about things? How often would you be training? What type of food would you be eating? Why don't you give us an insight on how you became a champion and all of the sacrifices you had to go through?
To be honest, I'm probably not the world's best trainer. I don't, and from a young age, I didn't love training. I loved playing, and I just couldn't understand why I couldn't play and why I had to train. So training for me is something that definitely hasn't come easy. But I think, a typical day in the life for us when we're in season is, majority of the time we're doing 2 sessions a day. In the morning session, because we're not a fully professional sport, girls have to work as well. So all of our training is done early in the morning or late in the evening. So we're normally up at about 5 a.m. We start our weights or gym program about 6 a.m. for an hour and a half. We've got the majority of the day to go to work or do whatever we do, and then we regather around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where we sort of undertake all of our court work and specific sessions, which are all skills-based, netball skills, obviously, and those sessions go for about 2 to 2.5 hours. So we have Wednesday off, but most of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday looks like that. We obviously play on a weekend, have a recovery day Monday and Wednesday, and start again. So in terms of nutrition, obviously exceptionally important for us to, and this took me a little while to realise as well, is, what you put in is what you get out. And, you're training so much, you're burning so much energy that you're constantly having to refuel your body. So we're lucky we have the help of a great nutritionist that's worked with us for quite a few years now, and we each have individualised programs that we can basically refer to, and everyone's different. Everyone needs to consume different amounts of food and energy, so you have to, I suppose, and you do after a while, get a great understanding of what it is that your body needs and how to best look after it. And it's really important, otherwise your performance just doesn't sit where it should be.
What are some of the jobs that some of the players do when they're not training?
Look, we've got a range of, we've had teachers, we've had lawyers, we've had girls studying at uni, we've got physios, we've got personal trainers. A lot of girls, because, I started playing this competition 8 years ago, and it's changed and evolved so much over the last 8 years. So if I look back to my first few years, everyone was full-time working and playing. Fast forward 8 years down the track, the game, particularly here in Australia, has gained great momentum and recognition. So therefore, we've seen increased sponsorship and some girls being able to rely on just playing the game as an income. So less and less girls are full-time working, but a lot of girls are setting up, businesses alongside netball, which complement the game, whether it be coaching clinics or, personal training, careers based around a lot of the stuff that we do. So I think it's really fantastic that that's probably been instilled in as part of the culture of this game, is that you do need something else alongside just netball, because as we so often hear, you're only one injury away from not playing ever again, and that can sound brutal, but that's basically the reality of it. So a lot of girls are exceptionally motivated and like to do stuff outside of netball to keep themselves busy.
And what do you do? I've seen on your website you've got your Fuel to Fly netball clinics, and you're involved with the Rethink Role Models campaign. Do you have any other jobs, or do you concentrate on that, or are you solely looked after by netball at this moment?
I have to say I'm really lucky. I've got some amazing partners and sponsors, such as Samsung with the Rethink Role Models campaign, and I work with ANZ and ASICS and a whole host of different people, which I'm just so lucky. And, with that comes obviously remuneration, but also with that becomes a lot of appearances and different bits and pieces that you need to do for each sponsor. So a lot of my time is actually taken up by doing appearances and guest speaking, and then obviously my clinics as well, which I run alongside Clan McMinimum and other Firebirds and Diamonds players. So there's, to be honest, not a whole lot of time when you add all those bits and pieces up alongside the training. There's really not a whole lot of spare time at all. So particularly busy. I love being busy, but at the same time, I am very grateful and lucky that I do have these amazing people that allow me to pretty much be a full-time athlete.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
More from Laura in just a moment, but I just want to remind you that today's sponsor is Audible. For you, the listeners of the Best in the World with Richard Parr podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/best. Again, that's audibletrial.com/best for your free audiobook. As you know, I've listened to lots of different audiobooks. Daniel Bryan's Yes, Carlo Ancelotti's Quiet Leadership, and John Ronson's So You've Been Publicly Shamed are just 3 audiobooks that I have listened to. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now let's get to a netball player, not just any netball player, but the best in the world. It's Laura Geitz.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
You mentioned that the sport is growing in Australia, and I believe there's a new National Netball League starting, I think it's in February, and I believe there's a 5-year contract, I think, with the Nine Network. How excited are you by this? But also there's talk that the rules of the sport might change. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, look, I'll answer the question about the rules first, because I'm definitely a bit of a traditionalist there. I'd hate to see the game change. I think our product is sensational the way it is. We don't have any issues with having, selling out games or people loving the product. So I'd hate to see the new rules be implemented straight away, maybe further down the track. But at this stage, I think our product is fantastic. Where I think we can do a lot better is actually marketing our product and selling our product and making our games exciting, like an entertaining factor when people come and watch the game, not just relying on the game itself to provide the entertainment, but, the extra bits and pieces on top of the game, I think, is where we can really improve and extend our audience. But in terms of Channel 9, coming on board for the next 5 years and the new Netball League, it's such an exciting time here in Australia. We've bid farewell to our New Zealand counterparts. We will no longer be playing them in the competition that we have done for 8 years. It becomes an all-Australian competition. So we're developing depth. We're providing more opportunities and positions for girls to be on court here in Australia. And we've got 3 new teams in the competition, which are all football club-owned teams, which is huge. So it's gained so much momentum. Channel 9 obviously means the games are free to air. Currently it's on Fox Sports, which is only limits the audience to people that pay for that channel. So, netball will be shown in every single household in Australia next year live. So the possibilities and the opportunities that brings is just sensational and really exciting to see the game grow and evolve even more than what it has in the past couple of years.
And I'm guessing you'd also like to see netball in the Olympics one day.
I'm actually having withdrawals from the Olympics, no longer being on TV 24/7. It was just amazing. So I must say there was many times, particularly watching the rugby sevens being introduced this year, I'm thinking, why are we not there? It's time, and it's time to introduce netball. It's time to have it there. And, they obviously announced the 4 new sports that will appear in Tokyo, I think surfing and skateboarding and a couple of extras. So I would love to see the game at the Olympics. I think it's well and truly overdue to be included, that's for sure.
And I would assume that if netball was in the Olympics, there'd also have to be a men's game. Now, last year, the head of netball's governing body, Molly Roan, said that the International Federation does not promote netball as a men's game and she makes no apologies for it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We actually play a lot of trial matches against the men. It's probably for us in Queensland in terms of getting the most realistic competition for ourselves is playing against the men. I must say we often laugh. We're like, what are you guys doing playing this game? Like, how did men get involved in netball? It's a question that we honestly have to say we do ask a lot. I think we've got to be very careful because currently our target audience or, our regular audience is women and young girls, and we want to extend the audience to males, and if that means males are playing the game, so be it. But at the same time, I think the really unique thing about our game is that it is female predominantly played, and it has been for a very, very long time. So I think there's advantages and disadvantages and pros and cons both ways you look at it. But, if it's about evolving the game and taking it to a broader audience, then obviously we need to listen to that and respect that at the same time.
You said that the new National League is only going to be with Australian teams, so you won't be facing New Zealand teams again in that competition. Will that make the national team matches between Australia and New Zealand even more intense, do you think?
It's really interesting. I'm actually interested to see what effect it does have because I think playing in this current competition that we've had exposure to each other, so much that we know each other inside out now. So we'll go back to, only having that exposure against, Australia, New Zealand when we play the test matches in the second half of the year in the international season. So it could potentially strengthen international netball, particularly the Australian Silver Ferns New Zealand games. So, and maybe, we've just got this competition that is so strong that we've developed so much depth and strength in Australia that we could have, we've got great depth already. So, it could potentially just take netball here in Australia, particularly the Diamonds, to that next level. So I'm actually really interested to see for the second half of next year, 2017, the international season, and how it does, if it does differ to previous years with the Australia and New Zealand contests.
And New Zealand media once branded you a thug. What did you think of that? And how would you describe your style of play?
I was mortified when I picked up the paper that morning and saw that headline. Oh, look, do you know what? I think if you read, and that was probably a good little lesson for me not to, read too much into everything that's said about you. And I suppose I take a lot of things to heart. So it did definitely, when I read that, as I said, had a bit of an effect on me. But I thought, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm a defender. My job is to intimidate. My job is to win the ball for my team. My job is to make attackers hate playing me and detest playing me and don't want to play me. So, I do play a physical game. I'm known for being physical, and I've been that way since I was a young girl playing. I go out and I try to win the ball, and I enjoy that physical contest. I enjoy, being, I suppose, aggressive to a certain extent out on court. So, obviously at the end of the day, the umpires have control of the game, and when they tell me to pull my head in and enough is enough, I'll listen and respect that. But at the same time, my job is to be out there causing havoc. So I think you can look at it two ways. But I definitely play a physical and an aggressive style of netball.
And I've seen you say that you're one injury away from retirement. Why is that?
Oh, look, I think probably it's not a nice thing to say, and I think I'm 29 at the end of this year, and I never ever thought I would be lucky enough to have been involved and had the experiences and opportunities I've had at this age. So I suppose in terms of my career, I feel particularly content with what I've done and what I've been lucky enough to do, and anything now, particularly following that back-to-back grand final with the Firebirds winning the premiership this year, I feel a great sense of contentment. So for me, everything is a bonus. I'll continue to obviously just assess the situation as I go along, but I'm not silly. I know that I'm coming towards the end of my career and not the beginning. And I've always said that I'm a player that doesn't want to stay past my use-by date, if that makes sense. I don't want to be the person that hangs on when I should have left last season. That's particularly important for me, and I've always felt that way and said that. So, it's my body. I definitely know my body is not what it used to be. I've got some niggly little injuries that need to be managed well, and I suppose the other thing for me is I'm really excited to start a family as well at some stage. So there's a lot of exciting things post netball to look forward to as well.
Do you think you still stay with the sport, maybe go into coaching or something like that?
I definitely won't coach. I know that my calling is not coaching. But absolutely, netball will never get rid of me. I think that, it's just given me so much. I feel like I'm probably forever in debt to netball. It's given me so much enjoyment. It's helped me grow as a person. It's let me meet some of the most amazing individuals and make the most amazing friendships all across the world. So, I think that I'll always be involved with netball, whether that's in a mentoring role or, doing a little spot of coaching here and there. I'd never take on a head coaching role, but I'll always definitely want to be involved in the game.
Well, you've certainly had a pretty incredible career, and I know Queensland thanks you for it, because I believe they're going to make, or that maybe they've already made it, maybe you can tell me, a life-size statue of you. Have you seen it? How does it look? They called me actually a couple of weeks ago to tell me about it. I haven't seen it. I think it's in the process of being made now. Look, to be honest, it was lovely, a really lovely gesture. I was a bit embarrassed by it, to be completely honest. At the end of the day, I'm one of 12 girls that have done so much for netball here in Queensland. It's not just me. So from that side of things, I probably feel a little bit embarrassed by it, but at the same time, very honoured as well. There's a couple of other statues here in Queensland. It's kind of the thing that they do, and all of those statues are rugby league players. So I'm in very good company, and it's a lovely gesture from the government here in Queensland. Well, I look forward to seeing pictures of it when it goes up, and of course we can probably do that on Twitter and various forms of social media. Just before we go, why don't you tell our listeners how they can continue to follow you on social media, or any other websites, or anything else you'd like to promote before you go?
Yeah, I've got my website, which is obviously all of our clinics, where people register for our clinics. So that's just www.laurageitz.com.au. Maybe we could potentially bring our clinics to you guys in years to come, which would be lovely. Great reason to come and visit. But and obviously just Instagram, LM Geitz. I am on Instagram, and Laura Fiber's on Twitter. So lots of different ways to keep up to date with everything that's happening in my life.
Well, we'll stay across all of that, and of course you're welcome in the UK. Thank you so much for being on the show. Laura Geitz, thank you for being the best in the world.
Oh, thank you very much for having a chat. Thank you.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Thanks again to Laura for coming on this week's The Best in the World with Richard Parr. As I mentioned earlier, next week's guest is Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson. Ahead of the Paralympic Games, we get a fascinating insight from her, as we've done with many of our previous guests on the podcast. Chester Williams, the rugby player, was our first ever champion on the podcast. Gary Hunt, the cliff diver, he's been on the show. Darren Campbell, the 4x100 metres Olympic gold medalist. Ben Askren from MMA, he's been on the show. Liz McColgan, Richard Folds. You name a sport, we've normally had the champion on it, and if we haven't, we will get them on. And if there's a particular guest you would like to hear on the show, then please let me know. It's very easy to do it. I'm very connected on social media. I'm on Twitter at Richard_Parr. It's also Richard_Parr for Instagram if you want to like one of my pictures. I'm also on Facebook. It's facebook.com/best in the world with Richard Parr. And also the old-fashioned contact form is on my website, richardparr.net. Lots of ways for you to get in touch with me. If you've got any other thoughts about the show, then also please let me know. And if you've enjoyed the show, I've got one request, and that's to go to iTunes. Go to iTunes and give me a rating and review. It really helps the reach of the program. Our figures have improved dramatically in the last 2 months on The Best in the World with Richard Parr, and we're going to be looking for brand new sponsors of the show. If that's something you think you or your brand or your company could be interested, then please drop me a line on that contact page at richardparr.net, or send me a message on Twitter at Richard_Parr. We would love to get involved with you and create a valuable partnership. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know Laura Geitz has given us a really good insight into being a top-level champion. We've got more to come. I've already mentioned next week, Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, and many, many more. Enjoy the rest of your week. What could probably be one of the last weeks of summer in the UK. We're turning into September, so who knows what can happen. But thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you again next week. Take care. Goodbye.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.